As far as I'm aware, I don't think there is any scientific evidence for life after death.
Spurred on by the photographic experiments, the Skull Group began a series of video experiments called Project Alice, after Alice through the looking glass. Their ambition was nothing less than to try and capture moving images sent from the spirit world. The Skull Group insists that instructions on how to position the camera and mirrors came from their spirit communicators. They were told to set up a video camera in the dark cellar, aim it at a pair of mirrors so that it could only film its own viewfinder. While it was recording, nothing unusual was seen. But when the tape was played back, these remarkable pictures appeared.
We had images on the video, sometimes of what looked like a tunnel of light. Other times spirit faces were coming towards us. Sometimes what appeared to be a doorway moving.
Skeptics claim these images were created by video feedback, occurring when a camera records its own output. But scientists have ruled this out. Video feedback doesn't produce this kind of result. As to what these extraordinary pictures represent, we can only guess, since their meaning was never explained to the Skull Group. This video, also totally unexplained, appears to be a ghostly face with moving eyes.
One way that we also communicated with spirit, and which was a very effective way, was by use of an ordinary, very cheap tape recorder whose amplifiers were used by the spirit team to carry on a two-way conversation with us.
We inspected this machine and found it was completely normal. Earlier, its built-in microphone had been removed to eliminate the possibility of recording anything. When the machine, which contained a blank cassette, was activated, witnesses were astonished when they heard this voice asking them a question.
Yes.
Experimenting with audio.
Yes.
Historic moment it is.
The Skull Group say that their spirit communicators suggested ways of improving their experiments. For example, they told Professor Ellison, one of the SPR scientists, how to build a device for boosting communications via the tape recorder. But this information arrived in a very strange way. These images appeared after an unexposed film locked in the security box was later processed by the scientists. The scientists speculated about who was providing this technical information. Then initials at the end of the film seemed to have solved this mystery.
I wrote to the Edison Memorial people in America, and they sent me a copy of one of his letters which contained his initials, which looked almost identical to the signature on this film.
This matching set of initials convinced the researchers it was Thomas Edison providing this information. Not only was Edison the world's most famous inventor, he also had an enormous interest in the possibility of an afterlife. His intention to build a machine that could communicate with the dead made headlines around the world, but he died before being able to build it. Is it possible that through the Skull Group he finally achieved this aim? Spirit voices speaking through the mediums. Spirit communication written on sealed film in locked boxes. All these incredible phenomena. But could the scientists have been tricked?
Skeptics are often unaware of the amount of experience and the amount of knowledge that goes into investigations of this kind. Between the 3 investigators, you could say we'd had 50 years and more. We know all the tricks.
The box was held in the hands of the investigators so that no one could get at it. And then immediately afterwards, we would take it out of the box ourselves so that no one else touched it, and then develop it ourselves in a special machine.
Despite all these precautions, the experiments continued to produce the incredible images seen here.
They were able to achieve whole lengths of film, sometimes up to as much as 4 feet, with various words, symbols, messages, all sorts of different things on that film.
Other films contained poems in centuries-old German and fragments of Greek, Chinese, Hebrew, Latin, and even Sanskrit. The Skull Group were ordinary people with no knowledge of these languages. But did these films have a purpose? If dead personalities were producing these images, why did they apparently design some of them as complex puzzles?
Providing something which is a puzzle, which is difficult to solve, is simply because it is difficult to solve. It isn't readily available. It can't be easily attributable to the person sitting around the table.
Despite lengthy investigations, the possible authors of some of the films, like this German poem, proved impossible to trace. But others were easier to track down. This one contains a poem by Frederick Myers. Intriguingly, Myers was one of the founders of the SPR and a passionate researcher into the evidence for life after death. Before he died in 1901, he promised his colleagues at the SPR that he would try to communicate with them from the other side. Could this film actually represent evidence of the afterlife sent by one of its greatest investigators? Mostly the researchers were unclear as to who might have created these films. However, there were clues as to who the ghostly authors might be in the form of initials or signatures. For example, in this film, the signature appears to belong to the dead singer and actor Ivor Novello. This was received on one of the Skull films. Compare it to Novello's actual signature. Investigators say these images were created in total darkness. But how?
I think that those pictures can be explained only by imagining that the spirits can project their recollections and images onto a film in some way we can't begin to understand. The only alternative explanation is they are all fakes, and I don't believe that there's evidence that that is the case.
Although the mechanism for their creation remains a mystery, investigators concluded they were unique.
As far as the photographic evidence is concerned at Skull, the strips of film, there has, in my view, never been anything like that at all, ever.
Later, a few video experiments were attempted in full light. Again, nothing unusual was seen during the recording. However, on playback, this unworldly figure appeared.